Greetings, adventurers! This is Lorne, your guild advisor, and welcome back to this week's installment of cuts and changes for DanMachi Season 4, where I highlight the differences between the original light novel source and the anime adaptation, in addition to providing you extra context for what you see in the show. With episode 17, we see more of Ryu and Bell's journey through floor 37, watching Ryu act as a mentor to Bell as she teaches him about the intricacies of the area and how to preserve strength in the dungeon. Meanwhile, the expedition crew gets closer to finding out what happened to Bell on floor 27, but not before they are completely surrounded by monsters as Wolf is exhausted from the repeated use of Kazuki, his new unbreakable magic sword. This episode does a bit of jumping around between perspectives and rearranges a lot of content, so let's just get right into it and start the breakdown. The episode begins with another flashback of Estrella Familia, this time focusing primarily on a conversation between Kaguya and Ryu. For a bit more background on Kaguya, I previously mentioned she's from the Far East, like Mikoto and Takemikazuchi Familia, but she's also distinctly from a noble family, much like Haruhime. She is also said to be the most skilled with the sword in the Familia. During the flashback, we learn that the younger Ryu was incredibly idealistic, not willing to accept any sacrifices in order to preserve peace and justice. Unfortunately, reality was not so generous. Estrella Familia regularly faced off against Evilists back when the organization was larger, and attacks happened frequently in the city of Arario. One detail that the anime cuts is that an adventurer named Artie Varma was previously killed in one of Evilist's attacks. Artie is one of the few friends outside of Estrella Familia Ryu had, and she was also the younger sister of Shakti Varma, the captain of Ganesha Familia. This particular incident involving Evilist is expanded upon in danmemo's 3rd anniversary event story, Estrella Record, and by extension the Estrella Record light novels, which adapt the mobile game story. Personally, I felt this was a strange omission, as Artie's death adds more emotional weight in the conversation between Ryu and Kaguya, and the appearance of Artie could also draw anime-only viewers to learn more about her, via the mobile game or the Estrella Record light novels. There is also a conversation between Ryu and Elise after Kaguya leaves, but I believe the anime is moving this scene to happen later in the show, similar to how the Justice conversation between Estrella Familia was rearranged. We then switch to Bell and Ryu fighting off against werewolf-like monsters known as Loop-Garos. As a child, Bell heard stories of similar creatures that attack villages on moonlit nights. These are very violent monsters that wield nature weapons made of stone. In the light novel, Bell also encounters blue lizardmen elites before this, which differ from normal lizardmen which are red like Lido. These are all warrior-type monsters, which is partly why floor 37 is called the White Palace. Before Bell and Ryu get overwhelmed, Ryu has Bell ignite the blaze rock she confiscated from the dwarves she interrogated in the first half of Season 4. As Ryu adds to the map of floor 37, she uses a magic feather pen, which uses the writer's blood instead of ink. This is a magic item created by Osvi, captain of Hermes Familia, maker of many items, such as the fire-quenching potion Aisha previously used to remove the Amethyst Spine of Flames from her body. Speaking of Hermes Familia, when Ryu mentions there are more skilled cartographers than herself, Lulune from Hermes Familia is one such character that comes to mind. Feeling that Ryu has been doing the heavy lifting in terms of navigating the dungeon, Bell voices his frustrations, which leads to Ryu comforting Bell. Bell truly does not give himself enough credit for what he has gone through. He's only been an adventurer for 5 months. That's right, it's only been about 5 months since the start of Season 1, and Bell is handling himself incredibly well given his circumstances on floor 37. As Ryu calms Bell down and gives him advice, she does a special gesture by holding his pinky. Bell believes it might have a special meaning to elves. As Ryu speaks to him, Bell notes that Ryu's words felt like magic, as they wiped away his anxiety and guided him forward. It was like Ryu was his mentor. Ryu remarks that in a different life that might have been the case, and one has to wonder, if Estrella Familia did not befall tragedy, it's possible that instead of Ai saving Bell from the Minotaur, Ryu could have been the long, blonde-haired swordswoman to do so. It's an interesting what-if scenario to think about. Even Bell wonders how learning to fight under Ryu rather than Ai's would have been like. The anime transitions to a quick scene with the expedition crew as they finally make their way into floor 27. Welf has been continuing to use his new magic sword to take down large swarms of enemies, but he is becoming noticeably exhausted. Remember that even though Welf has managed to create the magic sword that has no downside or breaking, it still uses the wielder's mental energy to power the magic attacks. The party supplies are low, so Welf does not have a good way to replenish his mental energy. We're brought back to Bell and Ryu as they review the layout of floor 37. The floor is comprised of several circular walls called the Great Rings, which divide the floor into 5 areas. These 5 areas are the Throne, Knight, Warrior, Soldier, and Beast zones. The more inward you go, the more intricate the maze of the floor. The innermost area which leads to floor 38 is the Throne Zone, where Udeus, a floor boss, resides. This is the very same floor boss which Ai's defeated by herself, causing her to rank up to level 6. We then get to see Tsubaki and the Tavern Girls wreck shop on the monsters of the water capital, as they are clearly overqualified for the area, being a party of a level 5 and 3 level 4s. Something the anime does not mention, likely to do with the rearranging of the order of events, is that Tsubaki is implied to have noticed something with her blacksmith's sixth sense, a reference to Welf, who just completed crafting his new magic sword. The weapon that Tsubaki is using is called Benishigure, a weapon she crafted herself, and being the captain of Phaistis Familia, a familia renowned for its smiths, it's a first-class weapon not rivaled by many. Chloe and Renova question if the dungeon is always in a frenzy, to which Tsubaki and Anya, the experienced adventurers of the group, deny. Anya specifically pointing out she's never seen the dungeon so ferocious. The expedition crew then makes their way deeper into floor 27, and finds some of the adventurers the Juggernaut slaughtered on its way to Bell and Ryu. The anime changes Aisha commanding Boris to lead them to where he last saw Bell, to Lily giving the order instead, and the previously reluctant Boris agrees without much resistance, because he can no longer hear the Juggernaut around. As the crew follows Boris, Aisha hears a voice giving a warning, but she can't see where it is coming from. For now, I'll let you guess whose voice that is. Going back to Bell and Ryu, they evade encountering a Polluta, a monster that can infect adventurers with a deadly poison. Ryu points out that this is likely the monster that led to the deceased adventurers' deaths. One other monster that Ryu warns Bell about is a Spartoi, which is essentially a monster that resembles a skeleton that fights with bone-like weaponry. The ooze that Bell and Ryu encounter in the episode is not in Volume 14 of the series, which this episode is adapting, but it seems this scene is not completely anime original, as it appears in a side story that was released exclusively for Japan. So it's nice that the scene exists in English in some form now. One can take Ryu refusing to drink the other half of the potion in several ways. That she is embarrassed to drink from the same flask as Bell, and that she is partly saving it for later, wanting Bell to drink the other half if he needs it in the future. When Bell asks if 2-person parties are normally found in the deep floors, Ryu says she recommends at least a 4-person party, with the addition of a healer. Even though incredibly strong adventurers like Otaro of Freya Familia could solo it, or even some members of Loki Familia, the deep floors required caution from all adventurers. The expedition crew enters the room where Bell fought off against the Juggernaut, and Boris is surprised to see that none of the corpses from the battle are in the room. Something was off. Ryu explains to Bell that each ring wall of the floor has a different color. She points out that the wall close to them is chalk white, which places them on the inner side of the third ring. Now that Ryu has a good idea of where they are, Bell perks up and becomes hopeful that they will make it out of the dungeon together. During the expedition party's search of the area, Lily notices the hole that the lambton which swallowed Bell and Ryu created. She even makes a connection to the lambton her party encountered and has a good idea of what potentially happened to Bell. Before the party can discuss the theory further, they encounter monsters known as Voltimaria, also known as corpsefish or flying fossils. There's too many for Welf to reliably defeat with Kazuki, plus he was getting spent in terms of mental energy. The anime also features some original scenes of Tsubaki and the Tavern Girls making their way into floor 27 themselves, which does a good job of showcasing how close they are to the expedition party, but at the same time would have been too late to help them. During the fighting with the Voltimaria, Cassandra has been healing the party and becoming drained in terms of mental energy like Welf. In the light novel, the flying Voltimaria are described as being a pitch-black tsunami that was ready to swallow the party whole. Just as the party is getting overwhelmed, other monsters appear in the room, but it is quickly revealed that these monsters are actually the Xenos, and they end up saving the expedition crew. If you don't remember, the two cloaked Zenos who talk with Lily are Fia the Harpy and Let, the red-capped goblin. We transition back to Bell and Ryu as they progress through floor 37 and get to hear a bit of Ryu's thoughts. She is determined to teach Bell as much as she can, so he can survive in the event that Ryu has to sacrifice herself to protect them. While Bell chases his ideal outcome where they both survive, Ryu realizes that she's changed from her younger idealistic self to a person that more closely resembles Kaguya's reasoning. Only time will tell what is to come. The moments between Bell and Ryu were adapted very well, and you could gain a sense of the two bonding together as they are relying upon one another in their dangerous circumstances. The expedition party was in a tight spot, but with the Zenos helping them, things are looking good for the party. In terms of this week's danmemo side story, it once again follows the members of Freya Familia as they make their way into the water capital. This time they leave Hegni to stay on guard, and he gets into his Chunibyo antics as he fights some of the monsters. As usual, I will leave a link in the description for those who don't have access to the mobile game. We should be getting a lot of Ryu and Bell for the rest of the season, and I am very much looking forward to their scenes, as the anime has been doing a pretty good job at adapting them so far. As always, if you would like to see more DanMachi content, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. Remember to follow me on my socials, and this is Lorne, your guild advisor, signing out.